After 5 years of marriage, he took his childhood sweetheart to every public occasion. He never acknowledged me. I divorced him calmly, and he asked casually, "Haven't I already made you Mrs. Beau, and you're still not satisfied?" A week later, at the family banquet I didn't attend, his mother said one sentence, and he went crazy. After 5 years of marriage, he brought his childhood sweetheart to every public occasion, never having acknowledged me. I divorced him calmly, he said casually. "Haven't I already made you Mrs. Beau, and you're still not satisfied?" A week later, at the family banquet, I didn't show up, because to protect the nanny, after one sentence was said, he went crazy. A premium romance story is on Yanqing Commerce Battle. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The lights at the 5th anniversary celebration were dazzling. In the lobby of the Doctor Group, there was a fragrant atmosphere and beautiful scenes everywhere. I stood in the shadows. On the second floor, watching Bai Yuqi and Jiang Jiwan moving through the dance floor. Jiang Jiwan wore an extremely eye-catching red dress, like a ball of fire, naturally nestled under Bai Yuqi's slender arm. The surrounding guests whispered to each other, but few people mentioned me, the legitimate Mrs. Beau. For these 5 years, he has been entering and exiting all public occasions, always with his childhood sweetheart by his side, Jiang Jiwan, Miss Shun, that is the general manager's. Private matter, you shouldn't look. The secretary who had followed me for 5 years handed me a glass of warm water. With a touch of reluctance in her tone, I retracted my gaze with a smile, and my fingers fumbled in my handbag to pull out a neatly folded sheet of paper. It was the divorce agreement I had just signed about half an hour ago. 5 years ago, when the Shun family fell on hard times, I married into a prominent family with the mission of a political marriage. For 5 years, I have reined in my sharp edges, attempting to be a qualified and virtuous wife. But what Bai Yuqi gave me, besides a cold title, was only endless coldness. I walked downstairs, pushed open the doors of the VIP lounge. Bai Yuqi was sitting on the genuine leather sofa, with Jiang Jiwan half sitting on his knee, carefully tidying his slightly disheveled tie. Hearing the door open, Bai Yuqi raised his eyelids to glance at me, his eyes full of the expected coldness. His voice was deep, carrying the oppressive aura of someone in power. I didn't speak. I walked straight over and placed the agreement on the coffee table. The white paper on the expensive marble tabletop looked particularly glaring. Jiang Jiwan swept a glance at the title. His expression changed slightly, then he put on a feeble look and said, "Sister Guanqi, don't misunderstand. Yuqi brought me here today because I have no male partner. If you're angry about this, I'll leave now." Bai Yuqi's eyebrows instantly tightened into a hard knot. He didn't even bother to look at the agreement, only gave a cold sneer, his long fingers tapping lightly on his knee. "Shun Guanqi, how many more farces do you intend to perform? I've already said that last night I wasn't feeling well. I was taking care of him as I should. Now you threaten me with divorce. Do you think I've spoiled you too much?" "This isn't a threat to Bao Ci." I looked him straight in the eye, my tone unusually calm. "I've already signed the documents. The Shun family's debt, I've paid off in these 5 years. You don't need to think I'm a burden anymore, and you don't need to spout those clumsy lies to appease me." He suddenly stood up, gripping my wrist with a force that seemed capable of crushing my bones, looking down on me with a superiority that was almost ridiculous. "Shun Guanqi, have you forgotten your identity? Isn't it already decided that you would be Mrs. Beau? Aren't you satisfied? Once separated from the Beau family, you won't even have a foothold in the capital. Are you determined to ruin your future for this bit of vanity?" I forcibly broke free from his restraints, stepping back, a sarcastic curl lifting at the corner of my mouth. "The title Mrs. Beau, you should leave to someone who really wants it. As for my future, I won't rely on Bao's concern anymore." I turned and walked out of the door, the angry growl from Bai Yuqi and Jiang Guowan's hypocritical urging following me. The night outside was cool, but I felt more free than ever. 5 years had passed. I had finally decided not to play this chess game anymore. Bai Yuqi did not come after me. In his mind, I, Shun Guanqi, was that humble wife who, no matter how many times she was abandoned, and would wait at the original spot with an umbrella as soon as he looked back. I drive back to that manor, which is nicknamed a top-tier mansion by the outside world. Here, every corner exudes a cold sense of handcrafted luxury. yet there is not a bit of the warmth that belongs to me. I open the wardrobe. Inside, there hang luxurious gowns that Beau UCI bought for the so-called Mrs. Beau to maintain appearances. I don't touch a single one. I only pull from the far corner a canvas trunk stained white by washing, which contains my only personal belongings brought with me when I married into the Beau family 5 years ago, a set of scripts and a few yellowed design drawings. Back then, when the Shen family was on the verge of bankruptcy, the Beau family offered a marriage alliance as the condition. I had to lay down the scissors and brushes with which I had won prizes in order to accept the investment under scrutiny, wear those long gowns that made it hard for me to breathe, and play a mute subordinate behind Beau UCI. Miss Shen is really leaving. Butler Lin stood at the door, watching my decisive movements, and let out a heavy sigh. He is an old servant of the Beau family. Over these 5 years, only he had seen me staying up late, staring at the cold, untouched meals, waiting for that man who never came home at night. Uncle Lin, thank you for your care over these 5 years. I stuffed the last drawing into the suitcase and snapped the lock shut. All the jewelry and luxury goods the Beau family had given me over the years have been counted. D was placed in the safe. The key is by the bedside. The only thing I'm taking with me is myself. When I carried my suitcase downstairs, it was already 2 in the morning. The familiar sound of an engine came from the front gate. Beau Yuchi walked in, reeking of alcohol, leaning on a servant like a boneless willow branch. Seeing the suitcase in my hand, Beau Yuchi paused for a moment. A flicker of mockery flashed across his narrow eyes, as if he had just heard some ridiculous joke. All the luggage was packed. He walked up to me with a swaying gait, holding a paper-wrapped bowl in his hand. His breath, reeking of alcohol, blew onto my forehead. Shen Guanqi, your thirst for drama is truly something. At 2 in the morning, you haul a broken box here, hoping I'll pity you and stay, and meanwhile you want me to help you persuade the Shen family to invest billions. Jiang Jiwan spoke softly from the side, backing him up. Brother, Yuchi has drunk quite a bit tonight. She's a bit blunt in her words. Don't take it to heart. Hurry, put the box down. In the dead of night like this, where can a woman like you go? If something happened, Yuchi would still have to go to the trouble of pulling you out. I watched them echoing each other, and inside I felt an unusual calm, as if anger was superfluous. I bypassed the white porcelain, gazed directly at the dark rain ahead, and calmly speak. White porcelain, the debt of the Shen family, I have already paid off through 5 years of business concessions and public relations cooperation. The agreement, whether you sign it or not, will not change the fact that I will leave. From this moment on, even if I starve to death on the streets, I will never take another step into the Shen family's territory. Very well. Beau Yuchi suddenly kicks the nearby vase stand. The exquisite bone china shatters all over the place. The sound piercing. Shen Guanqi, you'd better remember what you said today. Once you leave the Beau family, let's see how long that so-called pride of yours can last. Get out right now. Without a moment's hesitation, I grabbed my suitcase and stepped into the pouring rain. The door slammed shut behind me with a loud bang, as if sealing off 2 separate worlds. I stood in the rain, staring at the brightly lit mansion, and the very last thread in my heart finally snapped. 5 years, 1,825 days and nights, and at last, I was no longer someone's accessory. The rain seeped through my hair and trickled down my neck and shoulders, bone chillingly cold. But my hand gripping the suitcase had never been steadier. I didn't go to any of the properties under the Shen name because every inch of those places still carried the Beau family's presence. Instead, I took a cab to a run-down studio on the outskirts of town, a bankrupt garment factory I had bought under my own name 5 years ago. The dust lay thick inside. When I pushed open the door, the stale smell of fabric stung my nose. I turned on a dim incandescent light and spread the sketches from my canvas suitcase one by one across a scratched wooden table. Over the next 3 days, I cut off all contact. I changed into the cheapest yet most durable work clothes and sewed day and night. My fingertips were blooded by countless needle pricks, yet I found that pain far more grounding than Beau Yuchi's words of dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, in the top floor office of the Boshi Group, the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. Beau Yuzi sat in a leather swivel chair, instinctively reaching for the corner of her desk. At this hour, there would usually be a perfectly brewed hand-drip coffee and a well-organized financial briefing. But now, the spot was empty, save for a few cold rays of sunlight. "Where is Shen Guanqi?" she asked, not looking up at her secretary, with a trace of impatience barely noticed even by herself in her voice. The secretary wiped the sweat from his brow and replied, his voice trembling slightly, "Ms. Shen hasn't returned to the mansion since the day she left. Butler Lin said she left behind all her jewelry, designer handbags, and even the red sports car she used to drive. It's still in the garage. She didn't take a single key." Bo uses fingers, tapping on the desk, stopped abruptly. Then she gave a cold laugh, playing hard to get. "She thinks that will catch my attention. Go check which hotel she's staying at and have the front desk cancel her card. Let's see how many nights that bankrupt heiress of the Shen family can last out there on her own." "Has checked," the secretary swallowed. "Miss Shen did not go to any hotel, nor did she use any additional card. Where is your name? Seems grammatically incorrect here. Assuming it's a typo, let's correct the rest of the text." She even cancelled her private account of the Shen family trust, and now no one knows where she is. Bai Yuich's eyelids twitched. That sense of losing control made him strangely irritable at that moment. Jiang Jiwan pushed the door open, carrying a delicate insulated box in her hand, smiling with curved eyes. "Yuchi, don't be angry. Sister Guanqi probably wants to be alone for a while. There will be a business dinner in 2 days at the Cooperation Partners event. You should still take me there. So no one will see you awkwardly alone." Bai Yuichi looked at Jiang Jiwan's perfectly feigned smile for the first time, and the once melodious concern sounded a little harsh. He waved his hand, his voice cold as ice. "The matter of the banquet can wait. You go out first." Jiang Jiwan hesitated for a moment, a trace of ruthlessness flashing in her eyes, but she could only obediently retreat. Bai Yuichi stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the entire city. He was used to Shen Guanqi's silent presence, accustomed to her being as transparent as air yet indispensable. He firmly believed that the woman who filled her eyes with him could never truly leave. This was only a more sophisticated game. He waited for the moment when she could no longer endure and come back to beg for forgiveness. But what he didn't know was that at this very moment, Shen Guanqi was in that dusty studio, sewing her own new king's robe by hand. Bai Yuichi soon discovered that Shen Guanqi's disappearance wasn't an ordinary FAA. Week had passed, 7 full days. He had rejected all private engagements and returned to that cold mansion on time every day. The restaurant's tables no longer held steaming soups, and the foyer no longer had those neatly arranged home slippers. Even the faint fragrance of gardenia in the air, the scent Shen Guanqi used regularly, had disappeared after the maid's thorough cleaning. "Boss, these are all the bank cards Miss Shen left behind." Lin Shu lowered his head, handing over a small tray to Lin. Inside, neatly stacked, were more than a dozen black gold cards and supplementary cards. "I checked the records. The afternoon before she left, Miss Shen had wiped all the card permissions clean, and she didn't get a single cent in compensation." Bo Yuchi, Bai Uci, stared fixedly at those cards, as if something heavy had struck his chest. He always believed Shen Guanqi couldn't be without protection, couldn't be without him, because of the enormous debt mountain of the Shen family. But now, she had thrown all the keys to the vault back in his face, leaving empty-handed without the slightest hesitation. The Shen family still owes several $100 million to the bank. Where did she get the nerve? Bo Yuchi snorted coldly, sweeping the tray onto the floor. The crisp clank of metal echoed in the empty living room. "Go and see who's been supporting her these past 2 days, her so-called designer friends, or some blind suitors." Before the secretary could answer, Jiang Jiwan came again uninvited. Clad in a plain white dress, gripping a newspaper, she dashed up to Bo Yuchi with a panicked look. "Yuchi, you must see if this is Guan Chijie," she cried. A corner of the newspaper carried a barely noticeable recruitment notice. A private bespoke studio named Guanji quietly opened, and the legal representative was boldly written as Shen Guanqi. Bo Yuchi snatched the newspaper. When the professional name that had vanished for 5 years reappeared in view, his pupils suddenly constricted. He thought of 5 years ago, when Shen Guanqi had pulled on his sleeve, her eyes sparkling, asking him, "Can you, Yuchi, let me continue to finish that set of design drafts for the mountains and rivers?" What was his answer back then? He turned the pages of the financial statements with a sneer, never lifting his head. "Madam Shen, The Bo family doesn't need a tailor who messes around with scissors and sewing machines. What you need to do is maintain the appearance of the Bo family, he personally snapped her wings. Now she was growing full wings again at the edge of a cliff. Is Guan Chijia at Yuchi because staying safe at home is stifling her, and she wants to play with this little workshop? Jiang Zhuan's tone was scornful, with a trace of disdain. Such a studio with no real background might not last a month in the capital city. How about I step in and throw some money at it as a small courtesy? Bo Yuchi paid no heed to Jiang Zhuan's provocations, his gaze fixed on the two characters. Guanji, that isn't a small Wo workshop, that's Shen Guanchi's pre-marriage name abbreviation, and she intends to completely erase the Bo family surname and reclaim her original self. Carrying her bag, Bo Yuchi grabbed her coat and strode out, radiating a chilling murderous aura. I'll go personally and see just how much Miss Shen has grown. Jiang Zhuan quickly followed, her eyes full of malice. She originally thought that after Shen Guanqi left, Mrs. Bo's position would be within easy reach. But now, Bo Yuchi's reaction made her feel an unprecedented sense of crisis. Half an hour later, the car pulled up in front of the abandoned old garment factory. Bo Yuchi looked at the mess of fabric scraps on the ground and the crude sign, her eyes growing even more somber. She pushed open the rickety wooden door and saw a figure busily working under the dim yellow light. Shen Guanqi had her hair tied up in a neat high ponytail, wearing a dusty apron, bent over a sewing machine as her hands moved rapidly along the thread. Her side profile was cool and focused, a spark of vitality she had never seen in the 5 years Shen Guanqi spent at the Bo mansion. Shen Guanqi, come back with me, Bo Yuchi said, her commanding tone unchanged. Don't make a fool of yourself here. The Shen family can't afford the shame, and I, Bo Yuchi, can't afford it either. Shen Guanqi paused her work and slowly looked up. Her eyes held no anger, only a distant detachment, as if she were looking at a complete stranger. Manager Bao, this is a private studio. Unauthorized personnel are not welcome. Her voice was cool as she pointed toward the door. If you're here to order a custom gown, please take a number. If you're looking for your wife, you've come to the wrong place. Mrs. Bo died in that heavy rain a week ago. Bai Yuchi's expression shifted unpredictably under the dim light. He stepped forward, the overwhelming pressure of a longtime superior nearly engulfing Shen Guanqi's small frame, fixing his gaze on her hands, now dusted with a bit of chalk powder. He sneered, died in the rain. Shen Guanqi, besides playing these melodramatic tricks, what else can you do? Come back with me. The Shen family's debts are overdue. If you behave, I can help extend them another 6 months. Shen Guanqi did not panic as he had expected. He put down the scissors in his hand. The sharp sound the metal made on the desk seemed to strike at the heart of the white porcelain as well. He looked up, his eyes calm with not a ripple of emotion. General Bao probably has noble people who forget things easily. Yesterday afternoon, the Shen Group officially announced that it had accepted the investment from overseas Grand Capital, that 120 million yuan overdue debt. I have already paid off for the Shen family. Bo Yu's pupils suddenly constricted. That was the hard bone in the international market that he had always wanted to bite but hadn't managed to. Rumor has it that the chief executive of the other side is extremely picky and never cares about favors. That's right, the global license fee for the Young Her series that I'm holding in my hand. Shen Guanqi pointed to several manuscripts hanging on the wall behind him. His tone was calm. 5 years ago, you thought these were waste paper, but in the eyes of those who appreciate them, they are priceless. Bo Yu porcelain, your only chip has now become invalid. Jiang Zhuan stood nearby with a pale face. He hadn't expected Shen Guanqi to turn things around in just a week. He was about to speak to Sao Discord, but Bo Yuci shot him a cold glance, signaling him to keep quiet. He stared stubbornly at Shen Guanqi. That kind of always confident certainty, for the first time, showed a crack just as the two were at a stalemate. Luo Yuchi's phone vibrated violently. After answering, a strict and somewhat desolate voice came from the receiver. The hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Tonight's family banquet at the UCI residence. Why hasn't Guanqi arrived yet? The whole family is waiting for her, the nanny urged impatiently over the phone. Bo Yuci instinctively glanced at Shen Guanqi. His Adam's apple bobbed, and he lowered his voice. Mom, Guanqi has been feeling unwell these days and is resting outside. I'll bring the paper bowls first. You shut up, the nanny cut in sharply, her tone unusually grave, feeling unwell. You see, how long do you plan to hide it from me? Just now, the old master of the Shun family personally phoned me and said that the Shun family has already received a copy of your divorce agreement. I thought he was joking, but when I checked your house, in the old registration in the study, Shun Guanqi's name had already been removed. Bo Yuchi's phone nearly slipped from her hand. She stood frozen in place, with a moment of blankness in her mind. Then the nanny's voice echoed in the empty room, trembling slightly. You bastard, do you have any idea what Guanqi has sacrificed for the Bo family over the past 5 years? Do you think Bo's mineral contracts in Southeast Asia were signed just like that? Guanqi used her connections as the eldest daughter of the Shun family to drink for you, round after round, to win those deals. She hid 2 major surgeries from you just so you wouldn't worry, while you were busy playing the escort to that ginger bowl for today's family banquet. Since he's not coming, don't you ever come back. The final sentence hit Bo Yuchi's soul like a sledgehammer. He stared blankly at Shun Guanqi, his mind filled with the words 2 surgeries. In his memory, Shun Guanqi had always been gentle and composed, but he had never imagined the bleeding wounds hidden beneath that dignified surface. About the surgeries, why did you never tell me? Bo Yuchi's voice was hoarse beyond recognition. He reached out to touch her, only to find his own fingertips trembling violently. Shun Guanqi stepped back, avoiding his touch, a self-mocking smile curling at the corner of her lips. What good would it have done to tell you? Both times, you were busy celebrating Miss Jiang's birthday, or picking out an engagement ring with her. Bo Yuchi, back then, in your eyes, I wasn't even as important as one of Miss Jiang's colds. Asking about it now, don't you think it's too late? Bo Yuchi felt a sharp pain in his chest, the long overdue truth washing over him like a tide. Looking into Shun Guanqi's resolute eyes, he felt true fear for the first time. Bo Yuchi stood frozen in place, his phone, too heavy in his weakened grip, slipped from his hand and struck the dusty floor with a dull thud. His usually stern face now resembled cracked porcelain, with tiny, frantic cracks showing through. He stared intently at Shun Guanqi, as if searching for any trace of a joke on her calm face, but all he saw was dead silence. 2 surgeries, Shun Guanqi, how many other things have you been hiding from me? His voice was painfully hoarse, as if his throat were lined with coarse sandpaper. Shun Guanqi did not answer. She simply lowered her head and continued folding the fabric on the table, her movements steady and unsettlingly composed. When Jiang Jiwan saw the scene, a flash of deep jealousy crossed his eyes. He forgot to maintain the fragile facade and stepped forward to grab the sleeve of Bo Yuchi, shouting sharply, Bo Yuchi, don't listen to Auntie's nonsense. At that time, the Shun family was in danger. He was helping also for the Shun family. Besides, such a major affair as surgery, if it were really serious, how could he go alone? He must be trying to gain sympathy. Bo Yuchi did not look back at all, squeezing out a word through his clenched teeth. Jiang Jiwan's gaze widened in astonishment, his eyes instantly reddening. Jade porcelain, what did you say? I tell you to get out. Bo Yuchi suddenly turned his head, his eyes bloodshot. That kind of weapon wielded by someone at the pinnacle of aristocratic power exploded with force at that moment. Jiang Jiwan retreated a few steps in fear, stumbling out of the door in a panic, not even caring to pick up the handbag on the ground. The room fell back into a dead quiet, save for the sound of an old sewing machine turning. Bo Yuci stepped up to Shun Guanqi, trying to grab his hand, but was blocked by the tip of the scissors in his hand. Mr. Bao, don't soil my fabric. This is for exhibition in Paris. Shun Guanqi didn't even look up at him, his tone as calm as if discussing tomorrow's weather. As for the 2 surgeries, one was because of your mineral merger in Southeast Asia. I blocked 3 cups of potent industrial liquor from the local indigenous Tongmu, which caused an acute gastric perforation. The other was because you were racing on Miss Jiang's birthday and had an accident. I went to the hospital to deliver a blood type matching sheet, and on the way there, I had a car accident that led to the removal of a small portion of the spleen. He paused, a wry arc curling the corner of his mouth, but none of that matters now. To me, it was the grace owed to Beiqiao for examining the family. Since the grace is repaid and the debt cleared, we really have nothing to do with each other. Bo Uci felt his chest as if it was being torn apart by a giant hand, and the intense pain nearly took his breath away. He recalled the 2 times he truly wasn't by his side. The first time, he was busy dealing with a project in London. Upon hearing that he was hospitalized, he took it as ordinary fragility and casually issued a sum of money to hire a secretary to handle it. The second time, his mind was full of a muddled mess, and he hadn't even checked why Shen Guanqi's phone was always unreachable. He had never, though he thought that the woman who had always been gentle and respectable in front of him would be alone on a cold, icy operating table, enduring pain enough to crush a person. He suddenly charged toward the pile of old belongings Shen Guanqi had stuffed in the corner and frantically rummaged through them. In that yellow design album, he found a crumpled admissions form. The date was clearly the day he went to the seaside at dusk, and on the back of the form, Shen Guanqi had written in small characters, Bo Yuqi, if today I cannot walk out of the operating room, please remember to help me finish this set of mountains and rivers. At that moment, Bo Yuqi completely collapsed. He knelt among the pile of torn fabrics, the jewel-toned president who fancied he controlled everything. Now a man who seemed to have lost his entire world, he gazed at Shen Guanqi's cold back, and a despairing whimper escaped his throat. Bo Yuqi's collapse could not stop the scissors in Shen Guanqi's hand. 3 months later, at the award scene of Paris International Fashion Week, the magnesium lights poured down like daylight. Shen Guanqi wore a black qipao, her dark hair gathered with a single, simple jade hairpin, standing at the center of the podium, gripping the Golden Mace Award that symbolized the pinnacle of the industry. The audience's applause thundered, yet she only slightly nodded, her gaze cold and firm. During these 3 months, she seemed to have shed her chrysalis and become a butterfly, pouring all the spirit restrained for 5 years of seclusion went into the Shanhe series. The designs, blending Chinese freehand brushwork with modern minimalism, conquered all the judges the moment the show started. In the far corner of the venue, Bo Uci hid in the shadows. He was wearing a neat but slightly dull black shirt, his stubble a bit messy. The once intimidating aura of a stranger had now melted into deep affection and pain in his eyes. He watched the radiant woman on stage, and his fingers unconsciously tightened on the armrests, his knuckles turning pale from the excessive pressure after the award ceremony. At the post-ceremony cocktail party, Shen Guanqi was surrounded by a crowd of international luminaries. The young business prodigy and the executive director of Grand Capital, Lu Jianwei, had always stood by her side. As the two lowered their heads to talk, the tacit understanding between them felt like countless fine steel needles stabbing Bo Yuqi's heart. He finally couldn't bear it any longer. He pushed away those who tried to talk to him and walked heavily toward Shen Guanqi. His appearance caused the surrounding conversations to fall silent, as everyone sized up this once unrivaled ruler of Beijing, now so defeated and hollow. Congratulations, Bo Uci said. His voice was hoarse, carrying a hint of pleading humility. He took out a delicate velvet box from his pocket. This is what I had someone retrieve for you. Those emerald earrings you left at the old residence 5 years ago. You said they belonged to the Shun family and shouldn't have been left with the Bao family. Shen Guanqi turned his head. His gaze lingered on his face for less than a second and then shifted to Lu Jianwei. His smile was gentle and charming. Mr. Lu, this is the chief jewelry designer of the Bao family group. Since the earrings have already stayed at the Bao's place, think of it as my gratitude to the old lady Bao. You don't need to bring them over personally. Shen Guanqi's voice trembled as he spoke to Bao Uci. He stepped forward, his tone filled with almost desperate stubbornness. I know you hate me. In these 3 months, I've shut down all of the Jiang family's enterprises. The evidence of what Jiang Jiwan did, of doctors being bribed to hide your illness, I've handed it over to the Ministry of Justice. They will pay the price. As long as you go back with me, even if we don't remarry, let me stay by your side. General Manager BA laughed, but Shen Guanqi cut him off without the slightest change in expression. Miss Jiang's matter is your entanglement between the two of you. It's none of my business. As for guarding me, General Manager BA, I don't need a bodyguard here, much less a bystander who once personally crushed my dreams. Please feel free to do as you wish. He looped his arm around Lu Jianwei's, elegantly turned away, and no longer spared a single glance for Bao Yuqi. Bao Yuqi stood in place, watching his departing silhouette. At that moment, he finally realized that Shen Guanqi had not only taken away his name but also the last color in his life. In front of everyone's eyes, he slowly, little by little, Bai Yuqi lowered his head, like a withered tree stripped of all backbone. The fish in Paris always carry a bone. Deep dampness. After Shen Guanqi left, the reception hall of the party remained brilliantly lit, but in Bai Yuqi's eyes, everything around him had faded to grey and white. He wandered out of the hall in a spiritless daze, only to collide with the paper make bowl guarding the door, its face twisted at this moment. Jiang Zhiwan had long lost his former grace. His expensive custom-made gown was stained with rain, his hair sticking chaotically to his face. Seeing Bai Yuqi, he pounced as if insane, trying to grab his lapel. Bai Yuqi, you can't treat me like this. The Jiang family has gone bankrupt. My father had a heart attack and was hospitalized, and you still want to sue me, after more than 20 years of friendship? Could it compare to a few prompting words from that bastard Shen Guanqi? Bai Yuqi, disgusted, pulled him away with a shove, forcing Jiang Zhiwan to stumble and sit on the damp, cold flagstone road. He looked down on the man who had once protected his childhood sweetheart for more than 20 years. There was nothing in his eyes but bone chilling cold, and no warmth or provocation was left. Bai Yuqi's voice was as cold as midwinter ice. Jiang Zhiwan, I used to be blind to think you were kind and gentle. If I hadn't personally opened those hospital internal files, I wouldn't have known you had bribed the attending doctor, concealing the news of Guanqi's critical condition. You even used his fingerprint to SIG, in the asset transfer of the Shen Group. When he was injured in the car crash, it made him shoulder billions in debt after waking up. Every word he spoke made Jiang Zhiwan's face turn pale. He trembled, shook his head, his lips colorless. Because I love you. I only wanted him to retreat in difficulty. I wanted you to come back to me. The love you ever had was only for yourself, and the vanity brought by your thin sheen. Bai Yuqi interrupted him, his voice thick with self-mockery. You used my trust and personally destroyed the last possibility of our reconciliation. An indictment had already been filed with the French police, and multinational extradition procedures had begun. For the rest of your life, you can spend it in prison slowly repenting. He disregarded Jiang Zhiwan's fierce cries behind him and did not look back as he stepped into the waiting black car. Bai Yuqi leaned back in the chair wearily, pulling out the registration slip he had touched countless times from his chest. The tiny characters had long become somewhat blurred, yet every stroke felt like a branding iron seared into his heart. She had once believed that what she gave Shen Guanqi was the dignity every woman in the capital dreamed of, never realizing that such dignity was built upon the stripping away of his very soul. Manager Bao, a moment ago, someone from Mr. Lu Jianwei's side sent word. The secretary spoke cautiously, breaking the dead silence in the carriage. Miss Shen, tomorrow morning there's a chartered flight back to the homeland. Go direct. She immediately goes to the old residence of the Shen family. She seems determined to repair that old house and use it as the domestic headquarters for her official duties. Bai Yuqi closed her eyes, pressing her hands against her temples, her voice trembling uncontrollably. Help me prepare the ticket. Also, sort out all the equity of the jewelry brands under the Bai family. I want to use them as a token of apology and personally deliver them to the Shen family's doorstep. But the board of directors at Bai's company is probably expecting a struggle from me. Yuqi suddenly opened her eyes. That obsessive, crazed look chilled the secretary to the core. He doesn't want status, doesn't want money. Then I will tear apart this whole doctorate and pave the way for him. Even if he walks over my heart to get there, I'll accept it. The night grew deeper and thinner. Yuqi tightly clenched the returned earring in the darkness. He knew that uncovering the mask of the zombie bowl was only the first step. But would that man, Shen Guanqi, who stood in the clouds with a cold gaze, still give him a chance to atone for his sins? The early autumn in the capital always carries a faint chill of severity. Renovation work on the Shen family's old mansion is in full swing. I stand under the ancient maple in the courtyard, holding an evaluation report on Zedguan's brand moving into a top-tier commercial street. Lu Jianwei stands beside me, parting the hanging branches for me. His tone gentle. Domestic market feedback for Guanjing's brand is better than expected. The few core locations that the doctor yielded, are you really not considering them? Mr. Liu, business is business. That is Bo Yu's own loss of 800. I gently closed the folder and turned my gaze to the tightly shut door of the old house. He thought that yielding the location would compensate for 5 years of drift. Such an idea was perhaps too naive. Just as my words fell, a commotion of footsteps came from outside the heavy vermilion gate. I slightly frowned, but before the butler could step forward, a thin, exhausted figure appeared in my sight. It was Bo Yuji, who had come alone without any entourage, standing in the pouring autumn rain. He did not bring an umbrella, his expensive custom suit was soaked through, and he looked much thinner. Only those deep eyes, at this moment, were fixed on me with a desperate, almost hopeless longing. From his appearance, I understood. Bo Yuji's voice trembled in the rain, and he fished out a stack of letters carefully sealed with plastic film from his chest. Because of the force, his knuckles were pale. These are the ones you wrote to me 5 years ago. The late Jiang Yudao hid them from me and locked them in the old attic of the old house. I have read them one by one. Back then you were already. I cut him off coldly, my voice crisp as ice cracking. The Shen Guanqi of 5 years ago had already died in that surgery and car accident. What those letters said, whether cries for help or confessions, no longer matters to me. Now that you've pulled them out, what use is there anything besides self-indulgence? Bo Yuji suddenly stepped forward but was blocked by the security personnel of the old house. He seemed oblivious to the barrier, his knees buckled, and he fell heavily to his knees on the waterlogged blue brick floor. At that moment, the once mighty head of the Bo family, under the watchful eyes of everyone, relinquished all dignity. I know it's meaningless. I just want you to know how utterly I deserve to die. Bo Yuji bowed his head, letting the rain wash over his pale face. His voice was hoarse as if porcelain shards were breaking. I transferred 30% of the Bo family stake to your name. You don't need to remarry, you don't need to forgive me. I just want to ask you, don't let me lose the right even to look at you. I'll really go crazy. I watched the man kneeling in the rain, yet my heart remained as calm as a dead pool. This belated passion is like a fan in the depths of winter. Besides seeming absurd, it has no other function. Bo Yuji, what does your madness have to do with me? I took Lu Jianwei's arm and turned to walk into the house, leaving him with a resolute silhouette. From the gate of the Shen family, from now on, never let him step in again. Since he likes rain, let him be drenched to his heart's content. I walked into the warm inner room. Through the thick floor to ceiling windows, I saw Bo Yuji still kneeling in the rain like a statue, the letters in his hand blurred in the rising mist. Just as that period of misaligned, ridiculous years between us was finally washed clean by this rain, by the time the last corner of the Shen family's old house was repaired, winter had arrived in the capital, and snow fell in flurries, covering the whole old house in a sheet of pure silver. I stand in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the study, holding a freshly released financial report. The Quas brand's global revenue this quarter has already broken records. Shen has not only completely rid himself of debt but has even deftly acquired the design department that the Bosch Group once prided itself on. Lu Jianwei pushed the door open, bringing in a chill like that of a blood-winged thing. He draped a thick cashmere shawl over my shoulders. His voice was soft as he relayed the news from Dr. Guanqi. After that rainy night, Bo Yuji fell gravely ill, reportedly spiking to 40 degrees, nearly losing his life. The first thing he did when he woke up was to issue a perpetual stock authorization letter. The doctor's name is still his on paper, but all decision-making power is in your hands. I caressed the delicate lines on the shawl and showed no trace of emotion in my eyes. This kind of man always thinks that presenting these external things with both hands can ease the guilt in his heart, but he forgets about me. Shen Guanqi's greatest asset is the courage to start anew. Half an hour later, I drove to the Bosch Group headquarters. This is the first time since my divorce that I have stepped into this familiar building. Once, I was the accessory who would be scrutinized by the front desk even to enter the CEO's elevator, and today, when all the staff saw me, they collectively held their breath and bowed low with reverence. I pushed open the door to the CEO's office, and a strong medicinal smell hit me. Bo Yuci sat in that large genuine leather swivel chair. His normally erect posture was now somewhat hunched, his face was pale to the point of translucence, and he tightly clenched the very marriage certificate we had once held. You're here, He looked up at me. His voice was terribly hoarse. Yet the moment he saw me, a faint glimmer of light burst from the depths of his eyes. He struggled to his feet and, with trembling fingers, pushed a thick stack of documents toward me. This is all the remaining assets. As long as you agree, I'll leave the capital immediately, but please don't return those shares. It's the only thing I can still do for you. Watching him grovel so pitifully, I casually pushed the documents to the corner of the desk and said calmly, I'll take over the Boyu porcelain shares. They're a stepping stone to expand my territory. There's no reason for me to refuse. As for whether you disappear or not, it no longer makes any difference to me. The moment you repeatedly abandoned your duty for Jiangxiwan, the bond between us was already severed. I truly realize I was wrong. He collapsed back into the chair in defeat, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. These 5 years, I've been blind, clinging to a lie, and lost the most precious treasure. The cheapest thing in this world is affection that comes too late. Tu turned and walked toward the cold light of the door. Without a trace of hesitation, Boyu Ci, stop putting on these sentimental acts. You owe me for all those years. This half a doctorate is barely compensation, but I can't be bothered to settle the score anymore. From now on, no regrets. May we never see each other again in this life. As I strode out of the office, his suppressed, despairing sobs echoed behind me, like the final wail of a trapped beast. The moment the elevator doors closed, I looked up at myself in the mirror, my eyes clear and unclouded. The heavy snow outside had stopped. Sunlight streamed through the clouds, scattering dazzling light over the snow-covered ground. I stepped onto the snow toward my car. Each step steady and firm. Jiangxiwan repents behind iron bars, Boyu Ci languishes in remorse, and I Shenguanqi walk toward the radiant light that belongs to me alone.